Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, monimulu wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so very honored that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show. Please tell your kids' teachers, their librarians, their principal, their guidance counselors. And also, please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, wherever you found your podcasts. Our guest today is Josh Funk. He is here to celebrate Dear Unicorn. Before we invite Josh into the studio, I want to invite you to join me on my tour through El Salvador with Clowns Without Borders. I'm so very excited about this tour, and I can't wait to tell you all about it. You can follow along by connecting with me on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram. You can connect with me on LinkedIn at Jed Doherty, and on Twitter, it's at Jedley Magic. We would also love for you to help be a part of the tour. You won't be able to join us in El Salvador, but you can be with us in our clown car by helping to fill the tank. And you can do that by going to clownswithoutborders.org and contribute. And of course, as always, we would love for you to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Join us right now from not very far away from our beautiful studios here in Reedville. Our guest is here to celebrate his brand new picture book. It's called Dear Unicorn. Please welcome to the show, Josh Funk. Hey, Josh, how are you?
Oh, I'm great, Jed. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm delighted to have you. Josh and I were just sharing some memories of things that we've done with our kids here in the greater Boston area. And it's really fun how certain things that there's so many people share certain memories, even though we've never met before. But, you know, we've all kind of done the same things. We've gone mini golfing at the same place and swam at the same ponds and pools and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up out in the Boston suburbs, and I moved away for a little bit, but came back, and that's where we've settled. So I love this area. I think that actually, I don't know if you were segueing to my book, but even the fact that we have never met before, we have a lot in common. And that's a little bit about what Dear Unicorn has as one of its, I think, many different themes. But it's about a girl and a unicorn who are friends, who are pen pals, and but they don't realize that they're writing to a different species, and they're assigned to write to each other throughout the school year. They're also and they do eventually become friends throughout the school year by writing letters to each other, despite the fact that they have misunderstood who the other one is, and the fact that they don't have the same background at all. They're still kids, and they still have a lot in common, even if it doesn't seem so at the start.
Yeah. I love that in the description of the book, you say that Dear Unicorn is an ode to art, friendship, and keeping an open mind. I think that's so very important, because I'm afraid we're living through a time right now where there are not too many adults that have an open mind, especially when it comes to people who think and see things in a different way from them.
Yeah, that's certainly been a problem of late and has escalated, and especially in the book industry, you see a lot of that with ridiculous book bans that make no sense and have no place in society. But that's not really something I was thinking about when I was writing the story. I will have to say the phrase you read, the blurb, was definitely written by a very talented marketer or publicist, because I didn't put that together. It's great. I love it. I use it. But that is, sometimes it's easier for others to see the themes of your book from afar rather than for you to try to describe it yourself. And I think they did it very succinctly that way. There's obviously it's friendship. I think almost all of my books are about friendship. I don't know what that says about me, but that's for another discussion. But and definitely it's about, letter writing and art, because in this story, not only do they write letters to each other, but along with each letter, they are sending a piece of art that they've made. And I think that the reason that I did that has a backstory, but I do want to touch about the keeping an open mind thing. The whole story started, I got the idea because I was in line at the Slinky Dog roller coaster at Disney World in Toy Story Land. I think it's actually in Hollywood Studios.
Okay.
And it was in, I think, 2019. I was with my oldest child, and we were in line, and the line was so long. It was I don't know if you know that area very well or your listeners do, but the line went so far that it went out of Toy Story World. Like, that's how far the line was. And so it was basically kind of like skirting a fence along the side that was not really supposed to be a line, but it was. And we waited in the line, and by the time we actually got to where the line started, it had been about an hour. Like when you actually get to the actual line where they start having, it's roped off. And at that point I was like, oh my gosh, we're going to be here for so long, and this is so horrible, this line. But then I was like, but I'm in Disney World, and I should be happy because look around, it's Disney World. Everything's pretty. I'm in Florida. At least the Florida weather is nice. And so then I thought, but then we just got to the front of the line and it's already been an hour. And then, later on we get to the point where it like curves behind a wall and you think you're there, but that's actually just a third of the way because there's really a whole nother line that's twice as long. But I'm in Disney. Everything smells like cookies and I'm having fun. My kids are having fun. So I kept going back and forth with these emotions, and I realized that would make for an interesting picture book with two different perspectives. Mm-hmm. And I had written a picture book it came out in 2016. It's called Dear Dragon, and it's illustrated by Rodolfo Montalvo. And that book was about a boy and a dragon who were writing letters to each other, and they didn't realize they were writing to a different species. So Dear Unicorn is sort of a follow-up to it. And in Dear Dragon, they were also writing letters in poetry. So they were writing in rhyme. They were writing poems to each other. And so I thought, well, this could fit very well, this whole positive and negative aspect of the way that you look at the world. The glass half full or half empty, or I thought, what if I did something similar with another story about kids writing letters to each other through as pen pals. And I thought, what creature could be like, as I felt very human, being negative. I thought the human would be the negative one. And I tried to think of what would be a good creature to be the very bubbly, positive one that sees everything, not only glass half full, but glass overflowing. And I thought that a unicorn would be the perfect fit. And so I actually, along with my oldest child, Percy, we wrote the first draft, or I wrote the first draft with their help, the entire first draft before we got to the front of the line of Dear Unicorn. And that's true. Like it was not a great first draft. It had a lot of revisions that went into it, but it was a complete from start to finish. Here's a letter, this happening. Here's a letter, that happening. What happens? I didn't just outline it. I actually wrote the first draft on my phone. And so that's where it started. It really was, the original story was because of the whole perspective thing with, the human Connie. She is very negative. She sees everything, in the world glass half empty. She, for example, on one of the pages, she says she writes a letter to Nicole, or Nick, the unicorn, and she says, my team lost our soccer championship by 1 goal. Can you believe it? And clearly she's upset about it, at least the way the illustrator drew that. Charles Santoso illustrated Dear Unicorn amazingly, by the way. And we can talk about him more too. But he illustrated it that she was sad and she was very upset and negative. And then when when Nick gets the letter and responds, she said, "Wow, you made the championship and almost won." And so it's like, it's such a different way to look at the exact same thing. And I tried to think of as many things I could throw in there, at least to start in the story, because the characters do evolve and they don't stay very negative. And well, the positive, we don't lose too much positivity, but from the unicorn, but Nicole, the human, does grow and become a little less negative, and hopefully that shows throughout the book.
Yeah. Well, I love that. First off, I can't think of anything else positive that has come from standing in line at Disney World other than the time that we spend with our kids. And hopefully we're not fighting each other and the kids aren't screaming. But it sounds like you and your kids had a wonderful time. And what a joy for the rest of the world that Dear Unicorn was born there. This idea of kids writing letters to other kids, to pen pals, I think a lot of listeners might be saying, pen pals? What, a letter? What's a letter? We don't do that anymore. And I think that that's a real lost art, the art of sitting down and just putting your thoughts to paper and writing somebody a 1-page, 2-page, 3-page letter. And I remember getting those letters and being just so excited and couldn't wait to sit down and write my reply, as opposed to today where kids are like sending texts and it's, "Hey, what's up? Nice to see you." And there's very little communication going on.
Yeah, I agree. But I'll say that what kid under the age of 10 or even, 15 or 20 doesn't like getting mail? I mean, as soon as you get a letter, my kids, they loved it. They get it. It could be junk. I mean, they were getting junk mail. Their names weren't in databases, I think. But, when they'd get a letter, they'd be excited because usually, and I was when I was a kid. I know my niece gets excited about getting a letter. And my kids enjoyed writing cards and letters to their friends, postcards. They would do a lot of postcard exchanges. In fact, my oldest has done some postcard exchanges with kids that are in tough situations throughout the U.S. and there are programs that you can actually look at and see. Do certain kids need encouragement? You can get their names and write encouraging things and become pen pals with them. And my wife is a teacher. She's a middle school and high school social studies teacher for geography. They would send postcards all around the world and get postcards from all around the world and have a map throughout the school year, put little pins in it for everywhere that they got a card from. But there's just such a joy of getting mail as a kid. And I think that although you may lose that when you get your first cell phone and you can start texting and it becomes old pretty quick, my kids don't even check their email. That's not even a thing. Mm-hmm. So, it's work for them, I guess. It's all just texting. And so I think that just the enjoyment of mail is something that is not lost on children. And whether you are writing lots of letters or not, whether you are a part of a pen pal program in school or not, which I never was, by the way. I always wanted to have a pen pal, and I think that's partly why I wrote these books. It's because I wanted a pen pal. I would love to be pen pals with a unicorn or a dragon or anything, or a human, I guess. But yeah, it's something that I find does not get old for children.
Yeah. One of the other things I love about this book is, in addition to just these characters having different perspectives on life, they don't realize that they're different species, and they're surprised to discover that. And I'm guessing in the end, that's okay.
Well, it's interesting because when I wrote Dear Dragon, which I just wrote it because I thought it'd be funny that these kids would be misunderstanding things. A boy and a dragon are misunderstanding each other. The boy said, I dressed up as a knight for Halloween. And the dragon said, "Ooh, that, thinks, oh, that's scary." And then the dragon says, "My father won the local fire breathing contest." And the human imagines a circus performer, but it's really just a dragon winning a fire breathing contest. And it goes on like that. There's a lot of those things. I think there are more things about dragons that I could play off of than there are about unicorns that could be kind of silly like that. The horn was really the only one that I could go with unicorns. because at one point Nicole breaks her horn and it's going to take 6 weeks to mend it. And she's, in Recovery Cove with some other doctors and other unicorns that have casts on their legs, and she has a cast on her horn. And in the next letter, Connie says, sorry about your horn. I take clarinet lessons on Tuesdays. And, and so there's silly things like that. Actually, one of my favorite, jokes that got cut out of Dear Unicorn that I had written it with, there were 6 letters going back and forth from the boy and the dragon. It got cut out of Dear Dragon. Mm-hmm. And the editor said, for great reasons, we're going to have some pages that don't have text. You need to cut 2 letters. You need to condense it to 10, 5 each way. And what got cut was the winter break scene when, the dragon went to the mountains and he said, I like rolling giant snowballs into men. Now, when a kid rolls giant snowballs into men, they are making a snowman. Mm-hmm. But when a dragon, or in this case, a unicorn with their abominable snowman friend Abe, when they roll giant snowballs into men, as is illustrated by Charles Santoso, they are literally rolling giant snowballs down a hill into skiing humans. And so, that's the kind of thing that I just thought it would be funny to have these jokes. And then what happened was, when it was acquired, when Dear Dragon was acquired, and the editor who acquired it said, the thing I love the most about this book is that there are 2 characters who become friends, even though they have completely different backgrounds. Like, you could hand this to, 2 kids who live in, warring neighborhoods or something like that. But because all you're seeing is their words and what they're like, and then you can become friends even without knowing what they look like and who they are and more about them, and showing that kids have so much in common across all different backgrounds. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. I didn't think about that when I wrote it. But and then when educators started seeing it, they said, I love how you can take this book and talk about making assumptions about someone's character. You can make an assumption based on their words, or you can make an assumption based on the way they write their poetry, or the assumption based on what they're drawing about who they are. And we can talk about that and how making assumptions, is not always correct. And you may have to look past some of those assumptions. And when educators started telling me this, I was like, oh yeah, I guess that is something you can do. And so it's something that I never really tried to force into the books. Mm-hmm. And, when writing Dear Unicorn, I knew based on my experiences with Dear Dragon that it would have that effect potentially, but I was really not trying to push that, because I think if I had tried to write a book that way, then it would have failed. It would have been overly preachy and didactic, and I didn't want to write that book. Those books don't do well. Those books don't even get published. Mm-hmm. And so keeping it more, I guess, letting the readers figure out what they take from the book is sometimes the best thing about writing books. And so many times kids have said to me, are you talking about this or that when you wrote this book? Are you making commentary on, some situation? And usually the answer is no. It's usually just, but it's great that kids and adults are making inferences, and they are taking what they read in the book and applying it to their own lives and thinking deeper about the books and how it affects them in ways that were never intended. Mm-hmm. And this is often in a good way. Yeah. It does happen in a bad way sometimes when schools, try to test you on these things. Like, I don't think that, Gary Paulson wanted people to really dissect Hackett that much, but it's really just an enjoyable, fun story. But, when you have to take a test and my kids in high school, my son, he's always like, the books get ruined. Great books get ruined by, analyzing them too much. But yeah, I think it's awesome when there is stuff that kids can take away that is really unique. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned earlier talking about the marketer that came up with that great line that Dear Unicorn is an ode to friendship, the art, friendship, and keeping an open mind. It is sometimes wonderful when somebody else can open up your eyes to something you created. I was just doing this and it was fun, and look at it, and people are like, oh, wow, I can use that for this, and this is what I'm getting out of that. That seems like a really fun byproduct of being creative.
Yeah, it's very, very cool to see kids using the books that or teachers using them in schools, or just kids enjoying. I mean, that's why I write books. My day job is that I'm a software engineer. I write code. I have kids. They are now 18 and 15, but when they were very little, from the time they were born, I was reading them lots of books. And when they were about 3 and 6 years old, that's when I said, I want to try to write some books. And so, 12 years ago, I started writing, and my first attempts were really, really terrible. And eventually they got a little better. And I went to conferences, I took classes and workshops and things like that. And, ultimately, I was very fortunate that I was offered a publication on several of my books, and now I have an agent and all of that. But the reason I write, I'm not a teacher. I'm a parent. I read a lot of books with my kids. Most of them were great, but some of them I would want to hide on the top shelf and never read again. But most of the time, they were really, really inspiring to make me want to write books myself. And but I'm not an educator. I'm married to an educator. I know how much work goes into being a teacher, and how much more work it is than being a software engineer. And I write books not because I'm trying to teach kids morals or lessons or anything. I write books because I want kids to grow up enjoying reading.
Yeah.
And that's really the most important thing to me, is that kids like reading. And if they like my books, then hopefully that leads to them liking to read, because that's just such an important skill in life. Literacy is something that is maybe more valuable than anything, especially with, we have to be able to read and interpret all different kinds of news, all the time. And knowing how to do that isn't easy. Mm-hmm. And I didn't love to read as a kid. I was a good reader. I read early, but I didn't read that much for pleasure. And I feel like I missed out. My wife was always a reader. And when we started dating, we read a lot together out loud. I saw how much she read, and I started reading more. I had a long commute to my day job a decade ago, and listened to a ton of audiobooks, which counts as reading, by the way. And I ended up, I ended up becoming a reader. And when my kids were born, I knew I wanted to make sure that they didn't go through what I went through, which was not being readers growing up. And so I wanted to always set an example for them by reading. I think that might be the most important thing, is just read around your kids. Read to your kids, sure, but show them that you're also reading for yourself. Mm-hmm. You're not just watching TV and playing video games or on your phone. And unless you're reading on your phone, which some people like to do. I don't. I like real books. But anyway, and so that's really what I did. I think that I write books not just for the kids, but for the parents reading to the kids. Mm-hmm. Because I think that the adults, the teachers, the librarians, the caregivers, the grandparents, the big brothers and sisters, I write books so that, and I think this was one of my Twitter bios at one point, but I write books for adults to read to kids so that kids fall in love with reading. Mm. Like, that is essentially, in a nutshell, why I do what I do.
Well, I'm excited. I love what you said. The only thing I'll take exception to is that you are a teacher. You've been teaching your kids, and we love to say that parents are the first and most important teachers, and setting that example, letting your kids see you read and you loving reading is the best way to be a reading teacher for all kids. I have to ask, my daughter's fiance is an engineer, not a software engineer. He's in aerospace, but he always is joking that engineers are the most boring people in the world. How is it and I don't like to make judgments, but if I were to listen to him and believe what he's saying, how is it that an engineer is coming up with all these amazing creative ideas for kids' books?
Well, I think that engineering takes a good amount of creativity, mm-hmm. Especially if you're doing innovative things. Now, I I would not say that I'm doing particularly innovative things in the sense that you'll, experience a new app or some new hardware, or I'm making the internet faster or something like that. Although I guess maybe in some ways the company that I work for does help make the internet faster. But I think that, being an engineer is you don't have to pick math and science or reading and writing. You don't have to pick math and science or reading and writing. It's just, you can do both. Mm-hmm. You can enjoy both, and you can be good at both. And even if you're not good at one or the other, you can still enjoy it, even if you don't think that you're particularly good at it. I mean, I was a math and science kid growing up. It clicked a little bit for me. I was good at math, and so I just thought of myself that way. Nobody told me, nobody pigeonholed me as you're a math and science kid. I was just like, okay, I am getting good grades in math, and I'm getting okay grades in English, and I'm not the best reader. I read very slowly, and it's harder for me. And so, that's just the way I went. But, I was not in honors English. I was not in any advanced writing classes. In fact, in college, I went to UMass Amherst, and I took 2 writing courses the entirety of college. One of them was freshman writing, my first semester. And the other one was, you take a writing course that's related to your major, which was computer science. And so it was mostly technical writing and things like that. It was not like anything creative writing or literature related. And so, and I got my worst grade in all of college in that freshman writing class. I did very well, but that was the worst grade I got. And so you don't have to be the best writer mm-hmm. to be a writer or be an author. You just have to have fun doing mm-hmm. it. And I like coding. It pays well, and being an engineer, unfortunately it pays a lot more than being a teacher, which, it's not unfortunate. I guess it's just like wrong mm-hmm. based on how much work goes into being a teacher. Mm-hmm. But I do think that, I also had a creative side. I always liked to play guitar and write songs. And even if I wasn't formally trained as a writer at any point, it's okay to have both sides. Yeah. And it's okay to be good at both. And you might hate math, and that's okay if you're not into math. Even my wife was not the best, at math in school, but she uses a lot of math nowadays to do all her grading and all the spreadsheets and things like that go into being a teacher. And so it ends up coming around. You end up, it's all part of the larger collection of all of the things that you learn as you grow up. And whether you decide to focus on something creative or something technical, it's all there. I mean, somebody's making websites for all the publishers. Yeah. And, somebody's doing all the accounting for publishers. So there's ways to be in the writing world, but not be related to, but doing a more technical or mm-hmm. mathematical thing. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I tend to disagree with my daughter's fiance, because I think anybody who's, putting together rockets and spaceships and jet planes, I think there has to be a little bit of creativity in that. And the same goes with websites and this thing called the internet. So, I'm happy.
Yeah. I mean, on top of that, I think, you need creativity to move science to the next level, mm-hmm. right? It's not just doing math. Like, what is 4 times 6? Like, okay, cool. That's 24, but you didn't learn anything new. Everyone knew that already. If we want to take science to the next level, if we want to, go to Mars, if we want to have, satellite communications on our phones, if all the things that we want to do and to move science forward, it takes a lot of creativity.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know people listening may not want to go to Mars, but they want to know where to go to find out more about you and Dear Unicorn and the rest of your great books.
So I am Josh Funk Books everywhere. So Josh Funk Books, plural, all one word. All the social medias, joshfunkbooks.com. I'm trying them all out. I'm not on Pinterest or Tumblr, but I did just join TikTok and all those new ones that keep popping up, because who knows what's happening with Twitter X. But I'm on all of them. I post to all of them periodically. But joshfunkbooks.com. If you Google Josh Funk, I'm the first one that comes up. There are lots of us, which is why I did not get joshfunk.com. So if you go to joshfunk.com, you'll find somebody who's also another creative person. I don't know him, but I think he makes movies, used to make music as well, and art. There's a Josh Funk that has an IMDb page. I have actually met him, not personally, not in person, but virtually, because his kids are fans of my books. And I don't know, he also does musical stuff, and I do musical things. I have musical book trailers on my website, and I was thinking we might want to try to make a band called the Josh Funks. That might be kind of fun. If you look on LinkedIn, there's like at least 50 of us. And so.
All right, well, we've had a great time speaking to the author of Dear Unicorn, a book that was born in line at Disney World. Our guest has been Josh Funk. Josh, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks, Ed. I hope to see you around the Boston area.
Absolutely. Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Jean Johnson. She'll be here to celebrate the Reenie Roo Adventure Books. That's the next episode of the podcast. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to start by thanking our guest, Josh Funk. Please be sure to check out Dear Unicorn. I also want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Chris Doherty, and O'Leary Soji Franklin. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.